It's December 16, 2020. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I am going to walk part of the Ship Harbor Nature Trail here on the southern part of Mount Desert Island. This trail is in Acadia National Park, so let's get going. All right, this trail here is a figure 8. And it goes up the east side of Ship Harbor, which you can see through the trees there. It has 2 loops that make up the figure 8. The first loop is very easy. It's quite flat and wide. And you can see what the trail looks like. It's pretty much like this for the whole loop. And in fact, the first loop of the 2 that make up the figure 8 is more or less wheelchair compatible, as long as you had reasonably wide tires on a wheelchair, because the trail does consist of relatively fine gravel. Okay, here is a little map showing just what the trail looks like, and we are going to walk the first loop. The second loop is a little steeper and a little bit harder going, and I'm not going to walk it today for 2 reasons. First, it's 17 degrees and it's a little chilly for a walk in Acadia National Park, and the first loop shouldn't take me too long, so I'll stay warm. And the second reason is, this morning my cat tripped me up and I sprained my left ankle a little bit. Still hurts, but I can walk. I just don't know if I want to walk very far. So we'll head out the trail. The first little bit is just basically through light woods like this until we get to a fork where we are at the beginning of the first loop. We can go either way. I'm going to go in the woods side first and do the harbor side second. So we're going to go clockwise on this loop, and we'll do the woods and then the harbor. So what we'll see for the first part of the loop is just what the trail looks like as it goes through the woods. It does rise very slightly. I think the high point on the entire trail is about 55 feet above sea level, and the low point is right at sea level, and we will be going to that spot because that is just before you get to the junction between the first and second loops. Okay, we're coming up to the beginning of the first loop, right over there. So it isn't much of a walk to get to this first loop. And as you can see here, where we had some water pooled, it is cold. That water is frozen. Okay, here's the beginning of the first loop. As I said, we're going to go left and do this loop in a clockwise fashion. So here we go into the woods. And I'll film for the first little bit of this and then pick it up again as we get to more interesting things. Now I'm shooting this in 4K on my GoPro Hero 9, and you can see it's quite a nice little forest loop. And really, you'll also notice that the trail is very wide and you'd have no trouble going along this in a wheelchair. The woods here are quite pretty. Lots of moss. We look over to this side. It's very open this time of year because there are no leaves on the brush. Okay, I'm going to pause for a little bit and pick it up when we get a little further up. Well, here we are at a nice part through the forest. It's very peaceful today. There was one other car in the parking lot, so I almost have this trail to myself. Here's some more moss on the ground, and we'll keep going. You can see it's a very pleasant hike. And this is a kind of a test of the GoPro because, as I said, it's 17 degrees Fahrenheit. And I don't know how well this GoPro is going to work, how much my battery is going to hold up in this cold weather. Right now, the camera is still warm from having been in my house. But by the time we finish this hike, it's probably going to be pretty cold. Anyway, I'll pick it up again in a little bit. Well, here we go, walking along through the woods. It's fairly open here. And quite a pleasant walk. We get a little bit of a climb here. We're going to go up maybe 8 or 10 feet. And then we will gradually drop back down to sea level, just at the intersection of the two loops. Okay, so you get a feel for what this is like. I'm going to stop again so that most of this video will be along the harbor. Okay, I'm another minute and a half or so down the trail, and we're coming up on the intersection between the two loops, which is also the low point in the trail. Right up here is the intersection. They've got a nice sign and a little post. Now this first loop is a pretty short walk. It's probably not much more than half a mile, which, given how cold my hands are getting, even with gloves on, is enough in this weather. Okay, we'll take a look at the sign, and then we will head back. Now here's the beginning of the second loop. You can see it sort of goes up in steps built by putting logs across the trail. As we get up there further, the trail narrows, and there are actual sort of log boardwalks to keep you above damp spots. And this way, the trail goes out along the edge of the harbor, and it is starts to climb a fair amount when we get just past where we are now. And it also gets much narrower and rougher. So here's the information for a walk in the woods. Feel free to pause the video if you want to read it. And we're now going to head on the return part of the first loop. And this goes right over to the water, which is why I said the low point on the trail is right up here at sea level. Actually, it looks like it's about a couple feet above sea level. And here we have our first view of Ship Harbor. We're about 2 hours past high tide. Tide is going out. A little ice where areas were covered by water at high tide. And the upper limit of the ice here is pretty much where the high tide level was. So there's Ship Harbor. Here's another interpretive sign telling you what you can find in the harbor. And a picture of a sandpiper, a loon, a couple of other birds, and various bits of life that you might find on the bottom of the harbor. Okay, we're going to continue back into the woods. We'll go away from the harbor for just a little bit, and then the bulk of this loop parallels the edge of Ship Harbor, and there are a number of nice vistas. So when we get back to a vista, I will start up the recording again. Well, we're coming up on the first nice vista. We're maybe 100 yards down the trail. As you can see, it's pretty easy walking. I've not seen any ice on the trail yet. Turn the camera a little so it's not right into the sun till we get right up here. There we go. That's the entrance to the harbor over there. Now, it's very shallow. At high tide, you might be able to bring a shoal draft boat into the harbor, but any more than an hour either side of high, you probably couldn't. And when the tide gets more than about half tide or less, that area is mostly dry with just a little water running out the center of it. Okay, there's the branch of the harbor we were on, and right over there is where we were looking at the harbor from the beginning of this loop. Okay, we'll continue up and get a few more views of the harbor. There's the upper part of Ship Harbor. I don't think Ship Harbor is more than about 12 or 13 feet deep at any one place. It looks like we got a tree to scramble under. So I'll duck down. I'm on the other side of the tree. As I mentioned when we were walking the Wonderland Trail a couple days ago, one of the hazards of walking the trails in the off-season is that they often have trees down, washed out spots, etc., because the Park Service does not maintain these trails in the off-season. Okay, we'll walk up to this next viewpoint and get another look out over the harbor, and I think we can see the entrance to the harbor a little bit better from here. Well, they're going right into the sun, but there are two loons swimming out there. The water is probably the warmest place you can be right now. Okay, there's a better view of the entrance to the harbor. As I said, about now you could probably bring a shoal draft boat, maybe say 1.5 feet or less, into the harbor. Of course, when it's windy out there, the entrance to the harbor can get very rough, and it would be quite a challenge sometimes. But you can just see the Atlantic Ocean out there. And there, a loon just dove. Okay. The water is still in the 40-degree range, so it's much warmer than the air. Okay, here we go. Walk up here a little more. Well, there's another tree down. That one's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. It's a lot bigger.